Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, running a little bit late tonight, but dems to breaks. How's everybody doing? I hope everyone's doing well. Got an out-of-control mic here, which has got a mind of its own, and it needs to be welded in place, I think. Other than that, we're doing pretty well here in the Stratosphere Lounge. I hope everybody had a great week, whatever that means. And it's good to be here. So, this is going to drive me insane. So, you see what I got is this thing here, and it just does this. See? It's just really pretty. It's pretty weak. And it's about as tight as it's going to get, and a little locking. Some good. Yeah. That'll do. Reminds me of the dad in Christmas Story, which I liked very, very much. So I guess everybody's doing all right. How's everybody been? Let's see. What do we have to talk about today? I don't know that I have a topic burning a hole in me here. Maybe we'll just go to the questions. There's a frickin' thought. You know what? I believe that's what we'll do. So let me just check on something here. See if we got something ready for us on the members end. But we'll go to Facebook as well today. I don't think so. Okay. So let's see what we got here. I hope everybody is ready because we're just going to knock them down today. Just going to knock these questions down. I guess that's going to do it. All right. So let's go to the Facebook page and see what charming and insightful comments we have there. I almost did a theme show, and I don't know why. I'll do this next week when I have more time to warn you. I thought about doing two shows. One of them is a Growing Up Bill show, because for some inexplicable reason, some people want to know more about what my life is like. So that would be kind of a fun show. No questions prior to eject. Sorry, after eject. And for some other reason, I just thought, man, I want to do an ocean and a sea kind of a question. I don't know why, just hit me. Anyway, we'll do all those later. Be good to have another science fiction night. And it'd be fun to do the descending questions again too, the 5-letter, 4-letter, 3-letter, 2-letter, 2-word questions rather. That'd be kind of cool. All right, but anyway, here we are. It's Thursday the 15th, my goodness. So let's have a look at what we got here. Let's see. Here we go. How many? 31. I can probably get through most of these. And again, I'm just taking them in the order in which they are displayed. I can't get it to display either by likes, by most recent. I don't know how they do it. I I just know they do it. So top fan Dave Olson's got a little diamond by his icon, and he says, "Hi Bill, I love the Apollo show, and I was wondering if you'd encountered this story in your research. It seems that Eisenhower and others deliberately slowed the progress of our first satellite. The theory was if we sent a satellite into orbit first, the Soviets were likely to raise hell about how we weren't respecting any other nation's territorial rights. But if the Soviets went first, they were certain to ignore any other nation's territorial rights, and thus the precedent would be set that anyone can send anything into orbit. What does that say about colonizing the solar system? Does Earth law have any validity outside of the atmosphere?" Well, those are two different questions there. I've never heard anything about anybody delaying the launch of the satellite. From everything that I was able to gather about the period, we had the living daylights shocked out of us by Sputnik, and put the fast spin on the Vanguard program. That blew up on the pad. Von Braun comes in and says, "Mr. President, I can get you something up there in 2 months." And so all of a sudden you got Explorer, 30 pounds, and then you got the grapefruit satellite, which is cool looking satellite, I have to say. But it's about that big. So I don't really believe that there was anybody sitting on this technology waiting to go. It certainly doesn't seem like we had stuff in the barn, just ready to run with. It sure sounded like to me like full-on panic, and I think that's probably more likely. Now, the other part of the question is kind of interesting as well, and that is, do the laws of the Earth have anything to do in outer space? And let me see. I got to arrange my freaking windows here so I can see all of these many things and jack into all of this wisdom here. Okay, come on. All right, here we go. Does Earth law have any validity outside of the atmosphere? No. I mean, really, if you really think about it, if you have a law and that law is unenforceable, not unenforceable, then it's not a law. If you can't enforce it, it's not a law, and I don't see any way to enforce mining rights on the moon or anything like that. I will tell you though, and this really does annoy me. If we were to say that that there was an asteroid out there that was made out of solid platinum or something like that, and we decided to go out and start mining it, there would be people on Earth who would be protesting this. And not just because of the people coming, but there would be people protesting the pristine surface and who are we to do, all of this nonsense. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would have a real problem with ownership of the moon. But again, if I buy property on the moon and the people that sold it to me are ready to help me defend it, it doesn't really matter, honestly, what everybody else down on Earth says about it. It's just a question of can you enforce the law? That is somewhat related to the argument I made before about China and America, where, yes, China puts out far more huge numbers of well-educated people, and our numbers of educated people get smaller and smaller. But if you were to take the sharpest, 500 nails in the box, I think our 500 nails would be better than their 500 nails. And since you can't really put billions of people into space in the foreseeable future, I comfort myself with this thought, whether it's a delusion or not. So that's actually an interesting question. What do you do if somebody? I mean, look. I really do believe it's a finders keepers kind of thing, and I know for a fact that people would start complaining about, well, this company's up there mining all this mineral wealth, and it's the product, it's the property of the entire human race, and who are they to make money? Blah 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 blah. If you want to mine asteroids, go do it. I'm really at that point now, and I've been at that point for a while. I grew up with the whole United Nations kind of thing, man from uncle, and UN missions to Mars, and all of this stuff where all of humanity is going to get together and they're going to, it just doesn't work that way. The thing that I expected was that the United Nations would bring other nations up to Western standards, and it's just the opposite. It's pulled it down. So as far as I'm concerned, now the only problem here, Dave, is that if you go into space and you do what you want to in violation of whatever laws they make on the Earth, there's not a damn thing they can do to you while you're up there, but they can definitely do something to you when you come back, and they certainly can do something to you in terms of your base back on Earth. One of the premises I had for the Aurora show, which really suffered from the Aurora script, which got nothing to do with the Aurora Republic. I wrote this back in 2005. But it was a manned mission to Jupiter set in the very near future. And there's a singular problem with that script, and that is that there really is no antagonist. The antagonist was Jupiter itself and the difficulty of the mission, but I had to put some kind of spur to it. And the spur that I put to it was that this thing starts out with this experimental gas core nuclear rocket, and it explodes, releases radiation into the Mojave Desert. Doesn't really hurt anybody, but releases radiation. And then all of the weenies in the government immediately are planning to shut this thing down, and they're going to shut it down at the next Congress when they get the votes. And basically, they have to launch this mission before they're ready, because the only defense they think they have, meaning the guys who are launching the mission, the only defense they think they have is just say, look, if you shut us down now, those people are going to die. So I don't know. There's probably better ways to do it, but that was the best I could come up with. I think it's going to be an issue, and I think I'm going to live to see it be an issue. But really, it's like when we were doing the Apollo thing that you mentioned, and people having a problem with Buzz Aldrin, having communion on the moon. I know the moon is especially sacred to Muslims. That Allah is actually a derivative of it's Allah, the moon god, or whatever. But and obviously the crescent moon is their symbol. But my feeling is, if let's just say, no, who's the most likely candidate? Let's say Yemen were to put together a mission and go to the moon, and the Yemenis land on the moon, and they step out of their lander, and the first thing they say is Allahu Akbar. I'm not going to be offended by that, surprised, or in any way, offended by it. It's just, finders keepers. You got there. You can do whatever you want to. The big issue is, you really, it's so easy to think about this. I wanted to go into space my whole life, go to Mars, live on Mars, all that other stuff, live in space colonies. The reality of it is that you're basically committing yourself to live inside a 747 for the rest of your life, with a couple of occasional forays out into the surface in a suit. It is not. It's the kind of thing that sounds better, I think, than it actually plays out. Because you really are confined to a pretty small space for the foreseeable future. And while you are building something, that's great. Now, the flip side of that is you get to have something that's yours. And that is a very powerful, powerful, powerful thing. Very powerful thing. You could make a pretty good case that that space would be the ultimate place for conservatives to flee to. Let's just say we will retreat in that. We'll advance in that direction, because it's clear to me that the easier that life gets, the stupider people get, and the stupider they get, the more they expect that all this stuff's just going to happen by magic and automatically. And if the Western frontier was a tough place to winnow out the weak and the scared, then space will do that, and it will also strike pretty hard against the stupid. It's a very, very, needless to say, an extremely unforgiving environment. And I think that if you are living in space, you really cannot. You can't live on Mars and be an idiot, and you can't live on Mars and be a slacker either. That's something else too. You can't just sit there in your pressure dome while all the other people are out there, working the hydroponic farms or whatever. And that's really appealing to me, which is why I maintain, if things really go south, that the place for us to go would be Antarctica. I really believe it. Absolutely believe it. And Antarctica is very tough to get to, and Antarctica is a very unpleasant place to be. I'm sure there's some very nice months in the summer, but it's dark for half the year and all of that. And and you go outside, it's fatal. If you don't have the fuel running for the base, it's fatal. If you don't have your food prepared and stored, it's fatal. Trevor from Florida says also Greenland has become a possibility. Sure, why not? I think that'd be great. I think we take the flag with us, because the flag is the idea. The country's an idea. It's not a piece of property. I say we take the flag with us, and basically we look at North America as a field that has to lie fallow for a while, maybe a generation or two. And we go back and pick it up again after this idiocy burned itself out. But there really is there's no way to be a slacker or aggressively stupid in space. You don't have to be a genius, but you have to be careful, and you have to have a fundamental respect for things. And I don't think you can get really too completely high or drunk on a regular basis in space and not pay for it, at least not in the early days. But I'm going to just throw this in there because I think, to be fair to me, I haven't talked about this for a while. But one of the things that is so appealing about this Star Citizen game is that you can be looking with friends. The actual experience is a sense that you are all there together. You're talking to each other, and you can see each other on. But the thing about Star Citizen is even most of these, virtually all the planets are uninhabitable in terms of they're just moons with thin atmospheres. But there have been times, certainly during the wake that we held for our friend Bobcat several months ago, there was times you could stand up on that mountain and look around and say, if I could own this land, and in the game you will be able to. It's a real primal thing. I mean, obviously it's a virtual experience, but to stand on top of that mountain and look around at this barren but very beautiful landscape and just say, all right, this is mine, ours, we paid for it, we're going to live the way we want to here, and we better be prepared to defend it. I don't know. There's something extraordinarily appealing about that, really appealing about it. And sometimes I poke around in the kind of the ugliest places on Star Citizen, and I think to myself, well, I wouldn't want to put down a country here, but once you look at it and said, what it'll be ours, it's amazing, what you can do. It's amazing what you could build, amazing what you could put underground, amazing what you could construct. Look, life is about people. It really is. Life's about the people you deal with and what your home is like. I like living in Los Angeles. Certainly my wife likes living in Los Angeles. And this doesn't apply to her because she actually does a lot more social stuff than I do because she's so beautiful and so well liked, and I'm just a curmudgeonly old bastard. But I tell myself, well, I wouldn't want to live someplace like too remote, even though I find, I'm not going to mention the place by name, but let's say there's some place out there that's kind of remote and really beautiful. I'd say to myself, I couldn't live there. I'd miss all this stuff in the city. And then I said to myself, what do you do in the city? Do you go out to the theater every night? Do you go out to these, nightclubs and events and stuff? And the answer to me is no. I'd rather live with people that I like and that I get along with, and that I don't have to explain things to, or defend things on. So I think that's the appeal of the Star Citizen thing. I know it is for those of us who are hardcore. It's just real quick. Dave Big Booty said Lubbock. I don't think we go anywhere. I don't think we can go anywhere warm, Dave. I think warm's off limits. I think warm and hot is off limits. I really do. I think it's got to be someplace cold. I don't know why I feel that, but I really do. I cannot imagine America in the jungle. I can imagine America in Antarctica and in Greenland, and I can imagine America in a lot of places, but I cannot imagine it in the jungle at all. There's just something about it. I don't know what it is, but Steve Darrow says it was growing up in Florida. And And yeah, I don't know. There's something about it just seems antithetical to me. I'd far, far, far rather live in Antarctica than in Honduras, let's say. But honey, I want to reassure you that this is just speculation for the sake of the discussion. I have no plans to move to Antarctica, move the family or the cats or anything. So please don't worry about an imminent move to Antarctica. If I decide that we really should move to Antarctica, I will definitely write you a memo and keep you CC'd on it as the process develops. But anyway, this is there's this kind of this pride and ownership of things, and it really is a question of, well, it may be an airless, ice planet or a rock, but damn it, it's mine, and we all. We all live here. We're going to make it what we're going to make it. Yeah, Bo Monday says, how are you going to explain the Antarctica or bust sign on the bumper of the Camaro? See, the thing about Antarctica, too, is it's not easy to get to, and it's not easy to live there. And to me, evidence of my eyes is that the nicer the place is, the stupider people can afford to be. So anyway, I don't know. It's just thoughts that I had on that subject. So moving on. Hey, there's our friend Julius. Not a question, but rather thank you. I was honored to be mentioned as an example in your last Bill Whittle Now show about legal immigrants. Thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you, sir, next March. Yes, our friend Julius, who is coming to America and is going to be married in Georgia, and we're going. Natasha and I are going. And a bunch of other people are going because we want to, and because it's important. So, well, you're very welcome, Julius, and I meant it. It's just another example. We were talking about this in the Bill Whittle Now episode called "Building the Perfect Immigrant." Where I really just think it's an attitude. You certainly have that attitude in spades. Trevor from Florida here says, Bill's never heard of Minnesota, I guess. Trevor, I went to Minnesota to do a speaking event. I spoke on the steps of the Capitol on January 9th or something. I forget what year it was, 2009 or 10. It was 23 degrees below zero. I was dressed in my LA suit and tie. I was cold. And then another time, right around that time of year, went to do a show in Minneapolis, and they said, I had to do 3 events when I was there. They put their money together, and so the next one was a little road trip. We have to drive a little way to get to the other one, and the next one was in Bemidji, which was a 5-hour drive up and a 5-hour drive back, and I've been to Minnesota. I liked it a lot. I did. Anyway, moving on. Steve Darrow. Since the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Normandy still runs for 2 more weeks, what was the most important innovation involved in the D-Day landings and subsequent Battle of Norway? A few nominees: Mulberry Harbors, Higgins boats, swimming tanks, grappling hooks, Bangalore torpedoes, Rhino tanks, armored vehicle launched bridge, Bailey bridges. He doesn't know what happened to his top fan title, and I don't either. I'll have a word with Mark Zuckerberg about this directly. I think probably the most innovative thing about the D-Day landings was it Operation Pluto, I think? And I'm pretty sure this was Churchill's idea. I know the Mulberries were Churchill's. Mulberries were portable harbors. They floated 2 of them over. I think they were Mulberry A and B, but I'm not sure. The Mulberries were just basically a pre-assembled harbor. They didn't have a harbor. They needed to unload lots and lots and lots of stuff. You can't do it on a beach because you can't get the big ships up close enough. So So they built these 2 harbors and just towed them over there and kind of sank them where they needed them, and they worked great. Storm came along real early and wiped out one of them, but they were able to use the other one to get unloaded what they needed. But I actually thought the coolest thing, the cleverest thing, just because it was unexpected for me, was I think it was Operation Pluto. They figured, my God, we're going to have such incredible fuel demands. We're going to need so much fuel over there. How are we just moving the fuel's going to be crazy. So they ran a fuel line under the ocean, just dropped it on the channel floor there, and just pumped gas from Britain to France. But all of the examples that you mentioned are really, really terrific. I don't think the swimming tanks were overly successful. I don't think look. I saw a swimming Sherman tank, and I just said, "There's no way. There's no way. I just can't believe it." So anyway, yeah, the rocket-propelled grappling hooks, all that stuff's really cool. I think the Bangalore torpedoes are cool too. But for me personally, it was the underwater pipeline. Okay, moving on. What do you think about that? Doubters and haters there in the comment section who said I was going to do an hour on World War II. I didn't. I'm done. So there. Oh, hey, look at this. I haven't seen this guy around lurking in the shadows for a while. It's known miscreant Matt Lloyd, otherwise known around here as the Creeper. And we don't mean that in a bad way. Matt Lloyd says, what do you see as the primary duty of a good person? Primary duty of a good person, I would say, is to be good. Matt, you know? I mean, I know that sounds simple, but it's really the answer. It's not... Foghorn, I think we have a call sign. I think we have a call sign, Foghorn. There'll be a slight delay as the response comes back in. But Creeper's pretty cool. That's a good call sign. I really like it, actually. It's the best one I've heard, and we've played around with a bunch of them. Yeah, come on, Foghorn. Everybody in the squadron has a tactical call sign. I'm Skid. Foghorn is Foghorn. Known miscreant Matt Lloyd there has been around for... He's one of the co-founders of the Republic. He's got to have a call sign. He's been NTCS for 100 years. Just let's give him a name. I say we vote for Creeper, and I say we vote for it in the comment section of the Twitch page on the Stratosphere Lounge. All in favor of yeah, it could be cool, couldn't it? If anybody has any, I'm only refereeing this because Foghorn doesn't have the microphone. Although, if you've ever been in his presence, you realize he doesn't really need a microphone. He can pretty much talk to anybody in the country just by kind of leaning out the window. I know, no alcohol, nothing. But if anybody else has, we got to do something. So if anybody else has any other suggestions before we agree on Creeper, I'm more than happy to do that. I think certainly we can, at the very least, spend the rest of the evening pumping in something that we may find better than that. But I'll just keep my eye on that. Back to the question. What do you see as the primary duty of a good person? I think it's being good. I think the primary virtue of a good person is courage. I think courage is the primary virtue, and I think nothing happens without courage. And speaking as a guy who was really pretty afraid of a lot of things for most of the first half of my life anyway, until I started flying, courage is actually something you can learn. I really do. I think it's a trait you can acquire, and I think the way you acquire it is you just start. You know, you start, what's the word I'm looking for? You just start preparing yourself for the worst, you know. What's the worst that can happen? What would I do? You know, if you're being taken out someplace to be shot and you're going to be shot, there's nothing you can do about that. So are you going to go out in style, or are you going to go out like a mewling crybaby? I'm certainly voting for mewling crybaby, but some people... the more you think about these kind of things, the easier it actually gets. So I think the primary duty of a good person, Matt, is to protect the weak. And that's so funny, isn't it? That this would be the first thing that we Nazis would, we social Darwinist Nazis would. What the hell was that? Somebody just fluttered through the back. But I would say that it would be to protect the weak. That's what civilization is. That's what humanity is the opposite of this. Only the strong survive. So it's, oh, there's been a bug behind me all night. Well, that's not going to last. Next time I see that little bastard, we're going to have a discussion. Protecting the weak, and using strength and controlled violence, and keeping it controlled, and only exercising it when it is the last resort to protect good people from bad people. That's probably pretty simple, but it's good enough for me. Good people good people defend the weak, and good people are honest. They're not honest because they might get caught. They're just intrinsically honest. The idea of walking away with, like, somebody gave you an extra $20 in change or something, it becomes intolerable. It's just a fundamental daily honesty. Some of the things we talked about a little bit on that, the center holds right angle. It's just the kind of common working class values, courtesy, friendliness, helpfulness. All of these are qualities of good people. But ultimately, it comes down to having the courage to be willing to do what you have to do to defend people who are weaker than you are. And sometimes the hardest part of this courage thing is the moral courage. I've taken a lot of flack over the years for being an insert the blankophobe, and it stings. I really don't like it at all. But sometimes you have to have the moral courage to say. Sometimes you have to have the moral courage to say that those people need to be killed because they're murderers, and they're thieves, and they're rapists, and they are continuing to do this, and they need to be killed. That's not an easy thing to do. Sometimes this idea of being a good person and this kind of, we're going to go down. We may all become extinct, but we will never fight. We'll have our virtue intact when we go under, kind of Star Trek thing with was it the Organians or something? We will not defend ourselves. We don't believe in violence. We will not defend ourselves, and we'll all willingly die before we'll fight or hurt somebody or kill somebody. I just find that really kind of repulsive and disturbing. I remember one of the first things I ever wrote back in the eject days was, what the hell was it? If something about the right to defend yourself is important, because if all the good people are dead, then there's nobody going to be there to stop the bad people, and no good people to stop the bad people from. So, this is the part about courage and strength that's sometimes hard. It's like, it's not just the physical courage, it's the courage to say, don't make us do this, because if you do, we will. I remember, was it Golda Meir, I think, said, we can forgive the Arabs for killing our children, but we can never forgive them for forcing us to kill theirs. Something much like that. It's really true. And good people don't have to be necessarily personable people, but they're not aggressively cratchety people. In other words, you can have the marshal be a real silent guy, doesn't say much, but you can't really have the marshal be like the guy who's also a good guy, and at the same time he's constantly bitching about the weather, or how, just somehow just, or somebody needs to clean up this horse manure. I've been saying this for 40 years now. I get Festus, how come nobody's? It's like, no. So I think it's actually pretty straightforward, but I would say courage and the willingness to defend people weaker than you. Jason Rasmussen says, Disney CEO Bob Iger has allowed Disney to lose its soul. Remakes destroyed Star Wars, allowing liberal agenda into everything. Your thoughts? I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I cannot agree with it more. And this is one of the founding principles about this idea of doing these these video game movies and science fiction shorts. And started making this case and thinking seriously about it over a year ago. And in the interim, it's gotten so much worse. It's gotten so much worse. And there have been some victories. There's been some big victories. First of all, because the left pursues people that are not political, who are trying to get to movies or, Marvel Universe or get into video games or whatever, because the left has pursued them with politics, people who were never political before are political now, and what they're political about is they want to be left alone and they want politics out of their lives. I think that's pretty much my entire desire in a nutshell. What do I want from politics and government? I want to be left alone. I don't want to be told what to do or how to think. And large numbers of young people who have never had to deal with this before have found that their lives in the classroom were not ruined. They just basically, young people today grew up with this on their shoulders, that all men are rapists and that all boys are evil and white boys are more evil and white Christian boys are even more evil and all the rest of it. There's just kind of this identity politics and this grievance thing and victim thing and all of that. But they retreated into Star Wars and into video games, and the left cannot have it. If somebody's happy, they're not happy. So they have gone into everything and ruined everything. And I've been keeping up on this. This is my primary beat. Now, this is where I spend most of my brain cycles, is what's going on, what's the mood of the country among people who are young and either voting already or getting ready to vote. What's the pulse there? And I have detected an enormous shift in I can't describe it. It's just like putting your ears against railroad tracks, trying to tell how far the train is. But I have definitely detected a strong shift towards conservatism, only because people who were not political are now being subjected to politics, which they can stomach in the colleges, but what they can't stomach is having their religion destroyed. They can't stomach having Luke Skywalker and the entire idea of being a Jedi trashed, which brings up an interesting thing which I was going to talk about. It is definitely directly related to this question. So here's the problem. This can take a second to explain. Most of you know this, but if not, you're about to learn something. Here we go. So certain things like Star Wars has all of the elements of a religion. It came as a prepackaged religion. It's got a Messiah figure. It's got a devil. It's got pure evil. It's got pure good. It's got titanic battles between good and evil fought with swords. There are prophets. There are mystics. There's an afterlife. There's a code. There's a religious costume that you wear, and it's all there. All of it is there. And it was the religion of post-Christian America. It was the kind of thing that I don't remember when it was, but there was a poll in the UK, I want to say, and I think the second or third largest religion in the country people put down was Jedi. So it's important, or was important. But right now, people are not just angry. They're really, really, really angry, and they're very, very cynical, and they're at the end of their ropes. And the reason they're at the end of their ropes is because of canon. So I need to explain canon. When I say canon, I don't mean boom canon. I mean CANON, as in canonical, as in authentic. So here's the problem. You create a religion out of a movie, and then the second movie comes along, it's even better. Third movie comes along, not as good as the second, but it definitely ties everything up with a nice bow. And people go 20 years thinking about the things they saw and all the heroism and all of the manliness and the coolness of Han Solo and the courage of Luke Skywalker and all of this stuff. And so they start making some new movies. They make the prequels. And these are not good movies. They're bad. They're bad movies. But they're just badly made movies. That's all they are. They're just sitting around talking. Lucas touched the third rail of destroying Star Wars in a way that he didn't, but the way that Disney has. You could see it was like if you stood back far enough, you could see he just touched the third rail and got enough of a shock, so he rebounded from it. And not to completely nerd out here, but when in The Phantom Menace, just out of sheer laziness, he wrote the script. He delivered the first draft of the script 3 days before they went into production or something like that. That's just disgraceful. It's just embarrassing. But he was lazy and hadn't given it a whole lot of thought. So he asked to do something to show that this young Anakin Skywalker, this the guy with the mow haircut, who can't act and who turned into a very angry boy as a result of all the grief he took, which is not his fault. He needed a way to tell people. See, because he couldn't show him. He should have showed him, but he didn't. He was too lazy to show him, so he had to tell him. And when he told him, he was even lazier. He basically said to himself, how can I have this guy tell the audience just how powerful this kid is? So he comes up with this idea of midichlorians. And these are the things, they're like in your blood that give you the power of the Force. And you've either got them or you don't. You're either born with them or you don't. And so they basically, it's essentially like this little kid goes in for a blood test, and Obi-Wan back at the ship is going, my God, his midichlorian readings are off the charts, and everybody's going, what the hell are midichlorians? And then you realize that because of this laziness, Lucas has basically completely destroyed the entire idea of the Force and mastery of the Force and all the rest of it. So he had the good sense you never heard that word again, ever. In the next two sequels, just pretend it wasn't there. So they were bad movies, but they didn't destroy the character. I'm not going to get into the details. I've been on the details far too many times. But Revenge of the Jedi not only was a bad movie, it was a bad movie that undid the good movies. It destroyed the mythology. It basically tore apart the entire religion, and they did it on purpose. Kathleen Kennedy, super feminist, social justice warrior, the future is female, all that stuff. Basically told us what we're going to believe. And what we're going to believe is that women are powerful and strong. And so we have Rey, who has never, ever failed. She's grown up on a desert planet. She's a scavenger rat. But the first time she walks into a spaceship's cockpit, she flies better than Han Solo ever did. And the first time she picks up a lightsaber, she's able to defeat the primary force of evil in the dark side. And somebody pointed out, I thought this was really interesting, she'd never even seen water before. She kind of cries when she first sees a planet with water, and she grew up on a desert planet, but she swims real well. All of this stuff can't be wrong because we can't have a female looking weak, and we have to make men. We have to show the culture that all of this magical powers exist, and that they're stronger, smarter, braver than men, and just sit down and shut up and take your medicine. And so the problem now is this. The fans are trapped, and Star Trek fans are trapped with Discovery. And this is a big idea. I really do think this is a very big idea. And, the next Thor is going to be Natalie Portman, this 109-pound waif, 5-foot-tall waif is going to be the new Thor and throw the hammer and all that, okay, we understand. Castle Wolfenstein, the Wolfenstein franchise, which was a great franchise. The last iteration of it, instead of having our big strong soldier, we have his two daughters. And they go through the entire adventure going, way to go, sis! And it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's horrible. And we're going to have that shoved down our throats. So I've been all through this before. We all know about this. But this is actually kind of a breakout thought. So these people are destroyed because they're trapped by canon. They're trapped. And whenever you hear them talk about Star Wars, you say, I try to get my enthusiasm back up, but I can't. You can't undo what happened in Last Jedi. You can't untell that story. It's just we're stuck with it. It's canonical. Luke Skywalker is a mean, lonely, bitter, defeated murderer. That's not an accident, folks. That's not an accident. Watching Mark Hamill struggle with the script before, during, and after the shooting of that movie, until somebody finally told him, "You either shut up or we're going to swing a hammer at you." But there's a video on YouTube. There's many videos on YouTube, but one of them I think is called "The 25 Times That Mark Hamill Tried to Warn Us About Star Wars." Rubber City Rebel 99 says Star Wars is dead to me. That is the one statement that I hear most on the internet today. That's the number one statement. Is Star Wars is dead to me. Star Trek tends to run a little older, but Star Trek is dead to me after Discovery. And so, like I said, there's some good news in this, so stay with me here. So they're trapped. Luke Skywalker's been destroyed, and he's been canonically destroyed, so there's nothing you can do about it. Here's what I think ought to happen. I think that across the culture, I think the fans ought to basically say to themselves, somewhere along the line, the people that made these movies, including like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, Han shot first, changing the past, all of it. Over the course of time, all of the things that we loved about these movies and about these universes have been changed by people. And yes, they're canonical changes, but they're not the characters. They're not the characters, they're not the universe. Thor is not a 5-foot tall, 100-pound woman, just not. And if somebody wants to tell me that she is, and if somebody wants to tell me that James Bond 007 is a black woman, and if somebody wants to tell me all of these things, that so that Star Trek Discovery is canonical because, somewhere between Enterprise and the original series, we switched to these, these kind of costumes that look like they were designed for Studio 54 in 1979, these gold lame things. No. Spore drives, no. The Klingons looking like, just like, not even like people. No. No, no, no. I think there ought to be a call to the pop culture, and I'd be willing to lead this charge myself. And I want to basically say, listen, there's a lot on the table here for all of us. We all have a lot of our memories, our enthusiasms, our loves, our all of it is mixed up in this. So here's what we need to do. We need to decide what is canon and not the studios. We decide, not the studios. And I, honest to God, think that would just take off like wildfire. I haven't figured out the mechanism yet. Part of me wants to say that there's a vote. Other part of me says no. There ought to be something, the way you select the editors at Wikipedia or whatever, but you'd have to prove a certain level of knowledge or have a certain history knowing the franchise. Then you'd get onto kind of the Jedi Council of canonical content, and then they would decide. They would decide what is canon and what is not. And they could simply come out and say, everything that you saw in The Last Jedi is a lie. It's not, just didn't happen. Didn't happen. And the best part of it is, you fill that hole with fan films. In other words, if you didn't like the way Luke ended up in Return of the Jedi, you get some people together and you raise $15,000, $20,000 and you make a movie about what happened to Luke. And that becomes the new canon. And by the way, if it were me, I got a pretty strong feeling about this. I'm not the guy to do this, but I have a feeling about this. So the last movie is going to come out in November. That'll be the end of it for Mark Hamill's commitment. I'm sure he'll appear as a Force ghost or whatever. But Mark Hamill's heart has been broken, and you can see it on his face. You can actually see him crying at some of these press reviews and some of these forums. You can actually see tears in his eyes. So I say that when Mark Hamill's contractual duties are finished, I say somebody puts together $100,000 and they get Mark Hamill, and they decide they're going to go out and tell the story of Luke Skywalker the way it should have been told. And I understand that the studios would come down with this with a swinging hammer, but I have two things to say about that. First of all, I say Axanar, and secondly, I say, okay, then we don't ever mention his name. We just show him in the robes, we show him on the island, and we tell the story, and we consult with Mark Hamill on the story, and Mark Hamill gets script approval on the story, and now the fan film rules are you can't be any longer than 15 minutes. That's fine. We can do it in 7 installments, fine. And I think the fans ought to go out and make the Star Wars movies end the way that they should have ended. Not the way they wanted them to end, the way they should have ended. And I think that is a very, very powerful idea. And if Mark Hamill won't do it, then you got to get another guy, get an older guy. Or you pick up the story earlier, whatever. It doesn't matter. We've already been given a different actor for Han Solo. So Bo Monday says, I'm not convinced Mark Hamill has the will to unscrew this pooch. I bet he does. I bet he does have. I bet you anything he does. I bet if somebody went to him with a serious proposal and laid it out pretty much the way I did and said, Mark, this isn't just for you. It's not just for me. It's not just for the fans. It's not just for anything. This is just for justice. It's just for justice, right? We'll pay you scale because you have to stay in the union. We'll pay you scale. And here's the story. This is what actually happened to Luke Skywalker, not this crap that they foisted on us. It just didn't happen. We have decided, the fans have decided, the Canonical Council has decided that The Last Jedi is not canon. Poof. Because we're at the point now where fans can produce films and produce product that looks as good as the original. And I'm going to cite 2 examples here. The first one is Star Trek Continues. Where there are any number, probably 4 or 5 different fan film recreations of the original series. There was Star Trek Farragut and New Horizons, something. But Star Trek Continues put so much love and attention and money, but mostly sweat equity, that when I watch some of the episodes of Star Trek Continues, I honestly thought that I was watching the original series, and when I was pulled out of it, I said, this looks better than it did in the original series. There are moments when he turns around and he looks so much like James Kirk, it just takes your breath away. It's not so much there's a resemblance, although it is. It's just a mood, a twist, and I bought it. I bought it. I bought that was James T. Kirk. And I think that was great. But the big one and the big win is, Axanar says, I just stopped caring about both franchises. Everybody has stopped caring about the things that they used to care the most about. This is an incredible opportunity. And it's an incredible opportunity politically, but forget the politics of it. It's just a chance to do the right thing. So, yes, I don't blame you for not caring about the franchises. Yeah, Vic Mongoros. Vic series. It's great. So you don't care about the series anymore. Nobody cares about Star Trek anymore. Nobody cares about Star Wars anymore because these liberal bastards have basically taken this thing and weaponized it against us. So the way we fight back is to say, sorry, but we've decided now you can make all the Star Wars movies you want to, and you can spend $100 million on them, but we don't care anymore. And if you want to come after us, which leads us to Axanar. So, been having a discussion, serious discussion about these fan films for Star Citizen, whether or not we want to keep them in the Star Citizen universe, whether we want to start fresh with our own kind of universe. I'm leaning very, very strongly into keeping it in the Star Citizen universe for a number of reasons. But the question is, can you go ahead with the project when other people own the intellectual property? Eric Blake agrees with me here, and that's a good sign. So here's what I'm saying. Because Axanar and Discovery, sometimes you have an example that's so perfect that you almost think that you almost had to write it, like it couldn't possibly have happened for real. So for those of you who don't know the details, just very quickly, here's the deal. So people have been making fan films forever, and Vic series Star Trek Continues was a photocopy and I almost said ripoff, but it wasn't. It was a photocopy reproduction of the original series. I want to say they made 8 or 9 episodes. They were, they were a little preachy, but some of them were solid. One of them was best. One of them, the one where Kirk gets, there's like an alternate Kirk who stays trapped on this ship I think it's after the Tholian Web, and he's an old man, and he lived there by himself. If that show had been done, if that script had been shot in the original series, it would have been one of the best 3 episodes of Star Trek ever written. It was fantastic. So, here's the deal. Fan films have been made for a long, long time, including stuff like Star Trek Continues, which are so copyright infringed. I mean, every single thing about it is a copyright infringement. But people let it go because it's good for the brand, it's good for the buzz, good for franchise, all that. And as long as they don't make any money, they can say to themselves, okay, well, this is helping the franchise, but nobody's taking money out of our pockets, and that's where they draw the line, you see? So far, so good. So all of these fan films were made. Star Wars fan films were made. There was a couple of Han Solo films where the Han Solo is much better than the guy in the movie. Excuse me. And there's an actor whose name I've forgotten who looks so much like young Harrison Ford. It's just shocking. That guy needs to be hired to tell the story of Han Solo. That guy needs to be hired. And the special effects that are coming out of desktop now are indistinguishable from those special effects coming out of Industrial Light and Magic or whatever. And I don't think the fans care as much about the quality of the effects as long as the effects feel right, that they're serving the story. Okay, so here we go. So everybody's making all these fan films and everything's great. And then I happen to be friends with Gary Graham, who played the Vulcan ambassador on, was it Enterprise? I don't remember, to be honest with you. But he's one of the main characters in Axanar. And Axanar is a story that's told about 10 years before the original series, 10 years before the Enterprise, and James T. Kirk and Spock and all the rest of it. And it's about the war with the Klingon Empire, and it's about how the Federation was getting its butt just handed to them, just constantly being defeated. Here they are, this kind of scientific exploration mission, and I didn't know that, Eric Foghorn. Anyway, so there are a bunch of scientists and explorers and swell guys and handshakes and prime directives and all this stuff. They run up against the Klingon Empire. They're warriors. The Klingons are just totally destroying us. There's a great, great, great moment in Prelude to Axanar where, is it Ramirez? It's the new admiral. Tremendous performance. It's shot in big, big close-ups. I mean, from the side, it's like you just barely get their eyebrows and their lips in the frame. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's beautifully lit, all of it. But there's a moment where, because this whole thing is about reflections. It's all about talking about what happened at Axanar and leading up to Axanar. So it's called Prelude to Axanar, 4.5 million views. I cannot recommend it highly enough. So there's a moment there where the Admiral is talking about the first years of conflict with the Klingons. And he says, the strategy that the Klingons were using against us, and he actually kind of gets choked up for a minute. He stops. He says, best translates probably as the strategy of little respect. That's how the Klingons were treating us. They thought we were such a pushover that they didn't even think it was really worthy of them to be fighting us. So it's wonderful, and they spent $1 million on it, and it shows. So for the first time that I'm aware of, all of a sudden, finally, the hammer comes down on fan films. CBS, which owns the rights to Star Trek, sued Axanar and told them to take it down. And the reason they sued Axanar and told them to take it down was because this was set 5 to 10 years before the original series, and they were just about to roll out Discovery, which was also set 5 to 10 years before the original series. But if you look at Star Trek Discovery and you didn't know anything about Star Trek, there'd be no way to connect the two whatsoever. Everything is different. Everything is, forget the social justice warrior scripts. The Klingons don't look like Klingons. The ships don't look like ships. There's no warp drive. There's spore drive. There's this, it's all about race, and victimhood and all the rest of it. It just isn't Star Trek. But Axanar is. And Axanar is not just Star Trek. Axanar is great, great, great Star Trek. So CBS says, well, we can't have this. We can't have fans putting out product that is much better than what we're putting out. First of all, it looks better. It's a labor of love. And secondly, those fans apparently haven't gotten the social justice message and have decided to make a Star Trek story about, fighting the Klingons and pulling together and taking your lumps and being desperate and all the rest of it, instead of what Star Trek was really about, which is advancing the cause of feminism, victimhood mentality, and identity politics. So CBS went to war with Axanar and told him, gave him a cease and desist, and Axanar fought back. Now, when I heard this, and I only updated myself on this just a couple days ago, when I heard this, I thought, well, that just really sucks. Doesn't surprise me, but it really, really sucks. And good for Axanar for fighting back. I don't know. Certainly didn't have the budget that CBS did for legal fees. But they had some money. They had crowdfunded some money, and I went back and checked on them a couple days ago, and they said, look, we had to spend a significant amount of money that we'd raised for making the movies on legal fees. But here's the thing. The guy who's the writer and director and producer of Axanar, the guy who plays Garth of Izar, who doesn't look like a starship captain, and I really didn't like it first, but after 2-3 minutes, the guy just had me sold. Okay, so he looks like a pharmacist. He's a military genius. I completely bought it. Anyway, he's sitting on the set of the Ares, which is the Federation warship that precedes the Enterprise, the Constitution class ships. And he's sitting on the set, and he says, well, we had some rough times behind us, but I'm happy to announce that we will begin filming for the first installment of the first episode on October 19th of 2019, and there's a fan film about the fan film that's going to be shooting a week before that on our sets and so on. So he says, we're on, we're go. We're going to have to fit under that 15-minute time constraint, but that's not a problem. We'll just break it up. And I listened to this and I said, so you guys won. You won. There was some kind of settlement and some kind of restriction, and I think if the only restriction was 15 minutes, but basically CBS sued Axanar, and Axanar is back in production. CBS lost. They lost. This is, in the culture war, this is midway. And why it's midway is because of what I was saying before. Axanar, we are not defenseless, says Eric Blake. That's great. Axanar, I can't recommend it highly enough. Axanar is the victory of the fans over, it's not over the people that produced Star Trek. It's over the people that hijacked Star Trek to turn it into something that it never was, which is a vehicle for their politics. That's what caused all of this stuff. And it got so bad and so ridiculous that the fans said, okay. And the fans won. And so now there is going to be a Star Trek series that takes place before the original series called Axanar. And the uniforms look right, and the phasers look right, and the ships look right, and all the rest of it. My only complaint is that they have these giant spaceships like the Enterprise acting like fighter jets. The Enterprise is pursued by a Klingon D6, and the Klingon ship is a full 100 yards behind them, something like that. But put that away. So it's astonishing. That gives me strong confidence in our ability to do Star Citizen videos. If CBS went to bat and they had stakes that high, an established franchise has been there for 40 years, and we are rolling out multi-million-dollar, $100 million project, those are high stakes, and Axanar won. So I say we basically just run with this, and we decide from now on what's canon, and we make the films, and screw them, screw them. So anyway, that's an interesting point, and I really do believe that this is the most important fight on the table, and I really do want to be a part of this. I really do. If we could lead a cultural revolution that had nothing to do with politics, And basically that Cultural Revolution said, we want our heroes back, we want our bravery back, we want our adventure back, we want our fun back. It's not a word of Republicans, Trump, conservative, nothing in there. But if you get this, then you understand that what people are saying is, we don't want to be progressives. We don't want to be anything. We want to just enjoy ourselves. But enjoying ourselves means watching good guys shoot bad guys with laser pistols. And so that's what we want. And that's a win for us. It's not just a win, it's the win. So anyway, I just think it's very, very, very important. And I've talked about it a lot, and I'm going to keep talking about it because I think this is where the battle is, and I think everything else is just a complete waste of time. Let me show you one slide I put together here. It's going to take me a second to find. Maybe I'll do 2 slides. Give me a second. It's worth the wait. Hang on a minute. Got to have some kind of dead air, or else it's not the Stratosphere Lounge. Where did it go? Here it is. So just to give you an idea, because I had prepared some PowerPoint stuff, and there you go. So let me just show you 1 or 2 little statistics, little figures that I put together that I think are very, very cool. Hang on a second, it's worth the wait. I'm just going to pick one. I've got like 25 slides. I'm just going to pick the ones that matter. Come on, come on, come on. Okay, you're almost there. I got 2 slides I want to show you real quick. Come on. So what I did was I took a look at the top 5 conservative commentaries on the internet by subscribers. That's how I made the determination, by subscribers. And this is what I came up with. Go back one. I took a look at the top 5 conservative commentary on YouTube based on subscribers, and then I took a look at the top 5 game-related videos on YouTube. So here you go. I'm going to try loading it this way. It might work out better this way. Give me a second. And then, hang on. We're getting there. It's worth the wait, honestly. Just tap 19. Hang on. All right, so check it out. So here's the first of these slides. Come on, I just want it to be full screen. I want to mess. There you go. Okay, look at this. This is a list of the top 6. It wasn't 5. Top 6 conservative commentary in increasing order. TPUSA. Let me get my glasses on here. TPUSA subscribers, this is about 6 months old now, or a little bit. TPUSA has 117,000. Bill Whittle has 127,000. Ben Shapiro's 729,000. Daily Wire 1.5 million. PragerU a little over 2 million. Crowder 3.8 million. Those are the top 5. Here are the top 5 in terms of games. A guy named Laserbeam has 10 million. Game Theorists have 11 million. Jacksepticeye has 22 million. Markiplier has 23 million. Gaming on YouTube has 82 million. And PewDiePie has 95 million subscribers. And to see what that looks like, you have to see the single most important slide here, which I think is this one. I'll put it up here. Yeah. So here, I'll show you one more first. So the next thing I did was I decided I was going to try and make a point here. So give me a second. I'm going to load another image here. Is that tab 23? Yeah, hang on. Okay, so here it is broken down a little bit more. On the left is Shroud's homepage. On the right is TPUSA's homepage in terms of just what's on their front page. So I took a look at the number of views that show when you go to the page, you see the top 20 videos, and just looking at the number of views. TPUSA had 1.4 million views in the first 20. Shroud, who is a mid-level guy, talks mostly about was it player Battlefield Unknown? I don't know. Anyway, he's 66 million. So the final picture I want to show you is the one that's all the money here. This is the money shot right here. And it is this one. And this one is pretty shocking. Let me get this up for you here. Hang on. So, check this out, folks. Based on this pretty much fundamental research, here's what we can say. We can say that this is the relationship in round numbers. Holds pretty steady between conservative commentary and gaming. In other words, TPUSA, which has got a lot of publicity and a lot of support, has 1.4 million views on the first 20, and a guy named Shroud, who has a fairly popular, but by no means most popular gaming page, has 66 million. So all of the fishing that we're doing is in the orange wedge, and no one's touching the purple. And the purple is getting older all the time, and the orange is where the orange is getting older all the time, and the purple is where people are growing up to be voters. If this doesn't tell you, that we're swimming in the wrong ocean here, that the fight is in the purple area, not in the orange area, which is where I am right now, where all of us are, then I can't make it any clearer than this. It's just as clear as it can be. And this picture haunts my dreams, you know. It really does. It just constantly reminds me of just how off target we are with all of us. All of us. And I'm one of the smaller players here, obviously. But I mean, no disrespect for Prager or Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, Steve Crowder, any of it. But we're playing in the orange slice, and the purple slice is just dying to be conservative. There's just nobody's been able to tell them it's okay yet. It's insane. It really is insane, and we really need to do something about it. And I'm working on it. So we got a 501c3, and people want to donate some money. That's where it'll go. Anyway, enough about that. But that was a lot of fun. Okay, so let's see. Bob Knife. Sorry, Bob. Rush Limbaugh has certainly been pushing your and my argument that conservative is a terrible marketing term and has stopped using it on his show. The parallels are pretty strong. Have you been in touch with him? I have not. What term could you or should you be used, should or use instead of conservative? I kind of agree with Rush. I feel the same way about capitalists, but sometimes things are just dug too deep. I think, yeah, Steve Darrow says individualist. That's actually a very, 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 very good definition. That's what I would do. If I could change the language, I would shift it from conservative and liberal to collectivist and individualist, because that's the true definition. That's the one that hasn't changed. That's the one that goes back 3,000 years. Is collectivist or individualist. And the individualists are only been around for 250 years. So that's definitely what I would do. And I think that's really, really an important point. But the question is, at what point do you, I'm just looking at a thumbnail on BillWhittle.com, and this picture I had up. These pictures are turning. The color is just terrible. I mean, I did one of these things with the guy from the Four Freedoms, Norman Rockwell thing, and he looks like he's got the plague. Let me see. I'm just trying to find some questions from the members page here. Let's see. The members only blog is just incredible, really. This compression on the picture, Scott told me about this, but it's just shocking. I'm trying to find the page for Stratosphere for the Stratosphere Lounge questions. If somebody can help me find my page on this, I would really appreciate it. I should have had this done, but if somebody has the link and they can get it to me, there you go. I'm lost without. I'm just lost. But I would like to say in my defense that I was left unsupervised. So we'll continue on a little bit here. We'll keep going, and hopefully somebody will get me a link to that page, which you think I should know. Steve Young, Natasha's daughter meets the old man. What does she seem to think of you? Do tell. Oh, she hates my guts, obviously. We went to Mexico after we finished up the Apollo 11. Went and spent. I spent 3 nights in Cancun. Natasha and her daughter spent 10 nights in Cancun, and she hadn't seen her daughter in over 4 years, and I think the longest they'd gone before was 5 or 6 months. And I'd never met her before. I hadn't met my daughter-in-law, which is the only daughter or son that I have of any kind whatsoever on this earth. Thank you very much, Bo Monday. We got a chance to go down to Cancun, and the reason we went to Cancun is because she cannot get the tourist visa into the U.S., but she can fly into Mexico without a visa from Moscow, chartered flight, hotels all taken care of with all the, all-inclusive kind of thing, and it's great. So, needless to say, I know what she looks like. My wife talks to her daughter pretty much every night, although it's a 10-hour difference over there. And sure enough, she walked in, and the two of them just embraced, and it was really moving and really great to see. And all I can tell you is, she obviously was very nice, and we got along very well. I have nothing but love and admiration for that young woman. But here's what I noticed. I noticed that when she came in, she was a little bit reserved, and just a little, I don't know. It's hard. I don't want to say unhappy exactly, but just stressed maybe is a better word. And then over the course of the next 3 or 4 days, I just watched her completely loosen up and smile more and more and more and more. And then after I came home, because I had to come back to work, Natasha and her daughter stayed there for another 6 nights. And they're out on the beach and swimming everywhere, and they're going everywhere and having a fine time. And every time I'd get new pictures from Natasha every day, Diana got a little bit more tan, and she got like happier by the frame. It was almost like a morph kind of thing. She would, she started smiling, and then she started grinning. Then you'd see her laughing. Then you'd see her goofing, and it's about the best thing I think I've ever done in my life, honestly. It's just, I got more satisfaction out of it than just about anything, being able to pull that off. And as we started to get into coming up on the midpoint of that vacation when I had to leave, she was already starting to feel kind of sad about it. She couldn't believe that this was actually happening, She really just couldn't believe it. Kind of blew her circuits. And I realized the only way to overcome that is to have the return visit booked before you leave. That's pretty much the only way to, convince somebody that there is going to be another time. So that's pretty much what we did. Her birthday is coming up in early October, and just basically sent some of the airfares, so she's going to book that charter flight. She'll spend another 10 days in Cancun. She'll be there on her birthday. Natasha and I will go down. I'll try and stay a little bit longer, maybe 4 nights, 5 if I really push my luck. And then I'm going to leave my wife and my daughter-in-law alone to continue to grow this relationship, which was always close, but is closer now than it's ever been. And for this, I am exceedingly grateful. I'm grateful to you guys. I'm grateful for the members who basically have parted with $10 a month or more to allow me to do that. And it made my wife very, very, very happy, made my daughter-in-law very, very happy, made me very, very happy and proud. They had an amazing time, and we're going back. So so I see that this is the post questions for the 8/8 show. I don't know if it's the let me see. Yeah, so this will be last week's show. I will get on this, folks. I really will. It's shameful and shocking, and I apologize. I genuinely do. But I swear I will get on this for next week's show. And that's a promise. Yeah. I'm sorry. I keep saying daughter-in-law. Thank you, John. Daughter-in-law, daughter-in-law. No, sorry. Stepdaughter. I'm sorry. Yes. What the hell's the matter with me? I can't believe I've made that mistake so many times. I've said it 100 times. Of course she's not my daughter-in-law. She's my stepdaughter. And I'm the evil stepfather. That kind of thing. Hey, speaking of WhittleCon in Cancun, according to Rubber City Rebel 99, talks continue for a cruise, a Strato cruise, in February, March, or April of next year. Trying to figure out how many days to go. We're trying to figure out where to depart from. But it really does look like it's going to happen. They've become so popular, they're pretty much just a kit now. You pretty much just set it up. So we did hear some more about that earlier this morning from Shelley, and we have to pick a departure point. Foghorn says depart from Tampa. Tempting. I know that if we leave, that there's a short cruise from Los Angeles where we have a choice of going to Catalina Island, a whole 26-mile trip, which basically is the length of the ship, or down to Encinitas or something. No, thank you. If we leave out of Miami or Tampa, we can do the Caribbean. We can do Cozumel from Miami, I think. And I'm trying real hard to find a way to do Bermuda. Great thing about a Bermuda cruise is since I grew up there and I haven't been back since 1972, on the trip over, we can talk about all the incredible things to see. And then on the way back, we can talk about how bitterly disappointing everything is and how everything's gone to hell in the last 40 years. Antarctica cruise, I'd love to do one. I swear I would. But we'll save that for a while. Anyway, I really think it'd be a lot of fun if we do it. And we're going to do it. I'm very, very certain of it. It'll be me and Natasha and Scott and his wife Stephanie and our operations manager Shelley, and we're going to be available all the time, 24/7. When we say me, I mean Scott. But no, seriously. I mean, the only thing we really have to do is we can't. The only thing I really have to be that I cannot afford to do is to do anything where I have to sink a lot of money into this and then hope we sell tickets. But it doesn't look like it's going to go that way. I'd love to invite Steve Green. In fact, I will invite Steve Green. But I just want to make sure that we just don't that we don't go into the hold. I think there's an excellent chance to get Steve Green and his wife, and I think that would be just a blast. And we'll just, well, especially if Steve comes, we'll all just be sitting around heavy drinking. And hey, Scott just tuned in. Haha, yeah, sure, buddy. I was telling him about the Strata cruise, Scotty, and how much fun that would be, and the suggestion to bring Steve was suggested, and I thought that's a great idea too. I just don't know if he can free the time, but I will certainly ask him. Yeah, will the boat carry enough drinks for green? Actually, we're going to rent a tanker. You ever seen that underway replenishment where there's an aircraft carrier and it's steaming along at 25 knots or something, and then a tanker comes up beside it and they shoot a little rope over and then they pull the fuel hoses over and the carrier's nuclear. It doesn't need fuel, but they refuel the jets that way. It's basically a tanker and they've got hoses like this big, 3 or 4 of them going over. And if we do bring Steve, we're going to have to arrange for one of those filled with vodka and just pump it aboard just as fast as we can, and hope for the best. And if we run out, then we'll have to, medevac him by helicopter. Look, the more people we have, the more we can do, obviously. The reason I was keeping it to me and Natasha, Scott, Stephanie, and Shelley was because there is like a minimum number. There's like a break-even number. And below which it's really not worth doing in terms of all of the stuff. And that number is like something like 300 people. I don't think we'd have a problem getting 300 people, but I don't know that we would. It sure would be fun, though. And it's going to be fun. We're going to do it. So as I say, unlike some other people, who remain in their cabins and come down for the events that are on the schedule, we're going to be there pretty much 24 hours a day to talk late into the night and early in the morning. And as I said earlier, when I say we, I mean Scott. But anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to it very much. So that's out there. And I think at this point, I would like to go home, if you don't mind. I would really, I just want to go home. I want to see my beautiful wife, who's apparently watching this. Mama away, honey. And I think that'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge. We started a little late, but we leapt right into the questions. And this whole business about the culture war and canon and all that stuff is actually very important stuff. Rubber City says group cruises can be done with far fewer. Well, I'll tell you what. We're going to find out. Scott Ott just posted a comment for those of you watching on YouTube. He says, "Queue up here to ask Scott what it's like to work with Bill and Steve." Scott will also tell you that the number one question he gets is, what's it like working with Bill Whittle? And it's very touching, because I've seen a few of these. I was kind of lurking in the background once or twice, and somebody would come up to Scott and ask him what it's like working with me, and you can see Scott get a little teary-eyed and a little quiver in the lip, kind of thing. And then just all this talk about, it's just, I don't even need to get into the whole thing. I mean, voice of a generation kind of nonsense, and it's a, personal gift from God, and it's just embarrassing for me to repeat it, but it was, that kind of stuff in a general way. The greatest man who ever lived. I remember hearing that repeatedly, and of course that's just silly, but that's what I heard, and a couple of others. I don't really remember. It's I don't really like to talk about it, so I guess we'll let that go. All right. I think that'll do it. I'm going to wrap this baby up. I'm going to put this baby to bed. That's what I'm going to do. So that will do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge, made possible along with the every 4-year vacation trip to Cancun. Last time I was away from vacation was 2015 when I went to Oshkosh. All of this stuff is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, the paying members at BillWhittle.com. They make this happen. And I do remember, I don't know if we talked about this before, but just in closing, I do remember when the Apollo What We Saw series came out. A lot of people complained about the commercials. And I remember thinking, that's how you pay for a show. That's what we don't have commercials because we have members. And by the way, I'll just throw this out. If anybody would like to advertise on any of our programs and get the same kind of treatment that Stamps.com got from yours truly, we would be delighted to have you. You can contact us at info@BillWhittle.com. and I will tell you in advance that I heartily endorse this product or service. That was that Troy McClure? I'm pretty sure it was Troy McClure. No, it was Krusty. It was Krusty. I heartily endorse this product or service. Anyway, that'll do it. So I'm going to wrap this baby up. Going to upload it, and we'll get on with business. And our numbers are way up on views on both Bill Whittle Now and Right Angle. Way up. They're double. So that's very good news. And I actually had some thought. I'd never talked to Scott about this. He's going to find out now. I think it'd be an interesting thing to discuss. I really have given some serious thought to setting up a pop culture channel. It has nothing to do with me politically, nothing. I just see these cat videos getting 40 million views, and I think about what those revenues must be, and I thought to myself, I can edit cat videos. I can do that, and I can do top 10 lists too. Something to think about. But we're not going to worry about that right now. We have enough work to do, and I've got big series coming up, so I'm working on that as well. All right. Thank you very much for joining us, baby. I'm on my way, and that'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge, made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and we will see you next week right here on the Stratosphere Lounge. Is this ever going to end? My God, shut up and go home, you. They're bleeding me. They're just bleeding me. It's like wading into the Amazon and coming out with, You just go in and you come out and you're just like this shiny black glob because there's so many leeches on you, and they're just sucking all the blood out, and you give them everything you can, and it's like more, we want more, more free stuff. Yeah, okay. One day, they'll all be sorry. Yes, one day they'll all be sorry.